Come on, man. Good morning. There we go. Good morning. Welcome to Community Voice. I'm your host, Keith Parris. Good to be back in the studio. Because yesterday I turned on the radio, turned on YouTube. There was nothing, silence. And come to find out. And then the crazy piece about yesterday, WNOV, my sister and all those folks, they didn't lose power because of the storm. They had lost power earlier that morning.
Yeah.
So then the storm hit. That didn't help. So for all those folks, and I was out in Cedarburg for a doctor's appointment, man, it looked like midnight. It got so dark, man, and that's when that tornado had been coming through. Oh, man, it's crazy. Anyway, so let me set this up. I reached out to all 5 of the remaining and rejoined for the Democratic nomination. I have 3 response. Actually, everyone responds to one campaign. The other campaign is trying to. So, it was just you all. So I have in studio with us County Executive David Crowley. What's happening, man?
Doing well. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing better, man.
Every day's a good day.
I'm doing better. You know, the last time you saw me, it looked like a broke pimp. So that's I'm walking a whole lot.
You're doing much better now.
Doing a whole lot better.
Good.
So I wanted to do this just because I was getting phone calls. I can't answer for the candidates.
Yeah.
And I know you tonight is going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
So let me do this. I'll just start off. I'm going to ask all the candidates the same question.
Okay.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. So, what experiences in your personal, professional, and public service background best prepared you to serve as governor? And what distinguishes you from the other Democratic candidates in this race?
I was born in the struggle. Parents taught me the value of hard work. They struggled themselves with mental health and drug addiction. And when I think about just my experience, just living life, I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to, not know if you're going to have food on the table or whether you're going to have a roof over your head. But as I've been able to grow up, become a community organizer, go through AmeriCorps, work with many nonprofits, my background is about the people. And I would say that that's what makes me unique more than anything is that I started off as a community organizer. I didn't go right into, being an elected official. And community organizing gave me the ability to not only, take root here in the community, but it also allowed me to build authentic relationships and get things done and help empower others to do the work as well. But also as a state representative and as the county executive, I have been able to bring people along the entire political spectrum to the table to make sure that we are benefiting those that we represent. And so when I look at my experience, I'm the only candidate that not only served in the state legislature, but has experience actually running government, representing 19 different municipalities, 1 million people, and we've done incredible work. And so we have it's not just about the vision that we have for the state of Wisconsin. It's also about asking the question of who can actually get these things done. And I've been able to navigate the political landmines, if you will, to actually deliver not just for Milwaukee County, but every single municipality in this state. And I know that as the next governor, we'll be able to do even more work to make sure that when the tide rises, all the boats rise, to be honest with you.
Will Rogers famously quoted, "I am not a member of a political party, I'm a Democrat."
Mm-hmm.
So how would you describe, because there is this, people are describing, we're hearing these different descriptions of people within the Democratic Party. So how would you characterize yourself as a progressive, liberal, moderate, or something else? And then how does your governing philosophy shape the policies you would pursue as governor?
It's unfortunate that we try to put everybody in these boxes, when we talk politics, right? And everybody has a lane, whether you are pushing Democrats or pushing Republicans to focus on particular issues that aren't necessarily in the mainstream media each and every single day. And so I do think that, the different factions that we have across the political party, they have a role to play. And so when people say, well, what do you consider yourself? It's like, well, I'm going to get stuff done Democrat. I consider myself to be not just a progressive. I see myself as being a pragmatist and making sure that we're actually doing things not just to help us in the short term, but creating more long-term stability. It's like, as we continue to talk about the affordability crisis, we can do a lot to infuse more money to provide that relief, but that isn't going to solve the problem in the next 2 years. And so we have to focus on having a vision, have a strategic plan when it comes down to the communities that we represent. And so that requires partnerships. That requires us stepping outside of the box and not focusing on the status quo and being innovative in the solutions that we're putting on the table. And so as I run this race, I realized that, going back to your quote, it's not my job to get people to become a Democrat. I just need them to vote for a Democrat, because when you vote for a Democrat, not just in this governor's race, but in the state assembly, in the state senate, is going to allow us to pass the policies that's truly going to make a difference in everybody's lives.
And you used the word vision. So what's your vision for Wisconsin over the next 4 years? And how will people be able to describe your leadership, or how will people know your leadership was better over the next 4 years?
I talk about making Milwaukee County the healthiest county. And I want to do the exact same thing with the state of Wisconsin, make it the healthiest state in the Midwest come 2035. And I want folks to understand that health isn't just mental and physical. Money in your pocket is health. Access to transportation is health. Access to childcare, to healthcare, to a good public education system. All these things contribute not just to our individual health, but to our societal health. And so when I think about the next 4 years, I want people to, at the end of my first term, I want people to say that, no, I not only seen the difference, I felt the difference that this governor brought to the table. And not only did I feel the difference and seen the difference, but I was a part of the difference. Because so many communities across this state, whether we're talking, our teachers, whether we're talking our farmers, people who live in rural communities, people who live in zip codes like in the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County, where we've seen, a credible amount of disinvestment. It's about making sure they have a seat at the table, because if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And when you're on the menu, you have no authority. You don't have any power. And so we have to allow those who are directly impacted to have a voice, to have a seat at the table, to make sure that we're including them. And that's how we create more sustainability moving forward. And so, that's what I want. And I want, we always talk about how we have to defeat Trump. But, I'm knocking on wood because, at the end of the day, he's not going to be there in the next 2 years. But what we have to defeat is Trump legacy and focus on what we really want. And I think when I think about my party, the Democratic Party, we have been reacting to Trump, reacting to Republicans, and that's allowing Republicans in this administration to define who we are as a party. And so we have to get off the defense and actually play offense. And so I'm looking forward to being incredibly aggressive, in this term, because we have this opportunity to flip the state senate and the state assembly to make sure that we're pushing these policies that matter.
Let's get into some real practical governance questions, if that's all right.
Okay.
What are the 3 most pressing challenges facing Wisconsin today, and how would your administration address them?
So the 3 most pressing challenges affecting communities today is affordability. and I mean, think about it, right? When you talk about affordability, it's affordability when it comes down to property taxes. It's affordability when it comes down to paying for our public education. It's affordability because we haven't been able to raise the minimum wage, which is still $7.25 an hour. And so people need more money in their pockets. Affordability to have access to childcare and be able to afford to send their child, to an educational center so they can make a decision whether they want to work or not, or stay at home. Affordability when it comes down to healthcare. We have many communities right here in our own community and across this state, especially in rural areas, where you have hospital clinics and hospitals, closing down because premiums are too high and we haven't increased the reimbursement rate. And so there's a lot for us to tackle here in the state of Wisconsin, but we have to tackle all these things simultaneously and understand that we need a long-term vision. And so, whether we're talking, data centers, whether we're talking housing, whether we're talking childcare, healthcare, property taxes, public education, public transportation, all those things connect back to affordability.
Are you in favor of expanding Medicaid?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we have to do what's right for Wisconsin and not make decisions based off of who's occupying the White House. Because if we're not making decisions based off of who we are as a state, then that means that this pendulum is going to continuously swing back and forth, and we won't have any sustainability for Wisconsin residents. And so by expanding Badger Care, that gives us an opportunity to provide comprehensive care. It doesn't just include physical, it's including vision, it's including dental, it's including mental. It allows us to to increase the reimbursement rates so people don't have to fall through the cracks or travel 1 to 3 hours away to be able to see their provider. Increasing the reimbursement rates helps incentivize providers to be a part of this network, and it puts more money into, our home healthcare workers and family caregivers, more money into their pockets so they can actually take care of themselves while they're taking care of our most vulnerable populations. And so we have a duty to expand voucher care, and we can utilize, and by doing that, we'll not only double eligibility, but it allows our gig workers, it allows entrepreneurs, it allows our farmers, it allows our students to be able to have an alternative to for-profit insurance and make sure that they're getting quality care across the entire state.
What's your your position on our current funding structure for public schools, including the so-called 400-year tax? How would your administration ensure every child has access to a high-quality public education?
Well, we have to recognize that we have seen our public schools crumbling across this state ever since the Walker era, and we need to get back to the basics of providing for our families. And if people are saying, well, that's going to cost too much, well, we've been doing very little for far too long. And so we got to get back to funding our public schools to the tunes of 2/3 and increasing the reimbursement rates to 90%. And that's key, because that will naturally ease the property tax pressures we're all feeling, not just here in Milwaukee County, but across the entire state, because we've had to go to referendum in order to make up for the gap that the state of Wisconsin has created. And so this requires us to put together a bipartisan blue ribbon commission. It's not just looking at the school funding formula. We got to look at the shared revenue funding as well, for funding formula as well. How are we funding towns, cities, villages, counties? And so for the past 30 years, we've been operating under the status quo when it comes down to school funding, but it's antiquated now. And so we have to do something different. And I know that with Governor Evers and his 400-year veto, that's providing much more stability for our public schools than we ever have had in the past 10 years. And so if we can't get back to, the 2/3 funding formula and making sure we index to that to inflation, we're not going to be able to get rid of this 400-year veto, because our schools need to have dedicated funding so they can actually plan for the future. And I know that there's a lot of people, in this campaign who also talks about how we have to get rid of vouchers. And, I don't think we do not need to expand vouchers, but I think that folks need to understand that we have went to referendum after referendum and after referendum to bring in the amount of resources that we need with the current capacity of students that we have. And so if we were to eliminate the charter school system overnight, we'll be putting an even greater burden on our public schools who don't have the resources, who don't have the support, who don't have the space. For example, when you think about the city of Milwaukee, where half of our children is actually in the choice program. And so we have to be focusing on how do we build up our public schools to make it the school of choice for everybody in the state of Wisconsin.
Part of the question, though, was this idea of quality education.
Yeah.
And we go in and we do the evaluations of the schools. I won't say charter schools, but voucher schools, has it had an impact on the quality of education when it comes to our children?
I think that there are some good schools and there are some bad schools. And when it comes down to the system, what we need to be focusing on is, are they being honest as far as what they're doing? Are they being transparent? And we need to make sure that they're held to the exact same standards as our public schools as well, because we don't get to compare apples to apples. It's apples to oranges, the way that the state statute was actually written. And so when it comes down to quality, we can talk about, we can have a statewide conversation, but we have to recognize that we have over 400 school districts here in the state of Wisconsin. And so this is going to require working with, like the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, working with local school districts, putting our heads together to figure out how do we expand, the quality curriculum that we know is working across this state in communities that are being underserved, to make sure that no children falls through the cracks. But we have a responsibility to work with the Department of Public Instruction, to work with our community members in order to fulfill that promise to our kids.
You talk a little bit about the 400-year tax.
Yeah. So when many people, so there was what was this last session? Mm-hmm. When we were doing a school funding formula, they increased per pupil funding, and it was only an increase for the biennial budget, but due to Governor Evers' veto, that increase that we've seen was in perpetuity for the next 400 years. And that was basically a way to make sure that schools know exactly what they're going to get moving forward, because as long as we continue, to focus on the 2 years at a time, it's hard for our school districts to actually plan for the future. And so they can't plan for the next 2 years because, student population fluctuate, things fluctuate, life fluctuates, society fluctuate, seeing what's happening at this federal government and some of the cuts to education, that's continuously fluctuating. And so they don't have the ability to have the foundation to focus on that long-term planning. And so I really commend Governor Evers as far as what he did, because he brought stability to the system by doing that. But we really need a real fix, and that's going to require a state legislature and a governor who's willing to sit at the table to focus on the school funding formula moving forward.
Can we talk a little bit about technology, specifically AI and economic development?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence and data centers are creating a new economic opportunity, but also raising questions about energy use, jobs, privacy, and community impact. What's your vision for what Wisconsin's role in this emerging economy, and how would your administration balance innovation with accountability?
Well, one, I know that there's been a lot of talks about putting a moratorium on data centers, but a moratorium provides a short-term fix, but doesn't address the long-term concerns that we have, all across Wisconsin. And so it is mind-boggling to me that the state legislature left session without actually putting any guardrails in place to protect us from the current infrastructure, right? Because we already have data centers here, and the moratorium is not going to stop the construction of data centers between now and whatever started between now and the end of this year. So we have to actually hunker down and have it and hold these folks accountable. They need to pay their way, right? They need to pay for all the utility usage that they have. They need to pay for any grid or any infrastructure updates. And actually, it's a little tongue in cheek, but I call it the Beyonce approach. Bring your own new clean energy. They need to be focusing on building their own solar farms and wind energy to make sure they're getting as close to 100% renewable energies to power these data centers. But they also, when they're being built, we also have to require project labor agreements. They should be utilizing union labor. And I want to see community benefit agreements, not just in the communities that they reside in, but across the entire state, because we're all going to be affected by this.
Does the governor have a role in allaying the concerns of, we're running it right now in terms of there are people very opposed to having those data centers in their community. We dealt with it at Midtown.
Yeah.
How do you see the governor having a role in being able to allay those concerns that people might have?
Oh, I have some of the same concerns that everybody has across the entire state. And that's why we need to put these guardrails in place, because there are data centers that are already here, and we are not protecting ourselves from what is already here. And so, for me, we need to have an honest conversation as far as what is happening with these data centers. But I also think that with the data centers that are currently here, I want to leverage this for our communities. How can we leverage this for our school systems, for our local municipalities, for, small businesses, entrepreneurs, legacy industries? How can they also subsidize our energy use, right? Because I do believe, as we all pay into focus on energy to build our clean energy infrastructure, which these data centers will pay into as well. After we do so many projects, and it can only do so much every year, how about we use the excess of those dollars to buy down the rates of everybody across the state of Wisconsin? And so there are some things that a governor can do, but it's going to require partnership with the legislature in order to pass legislation that not only protects the people, but protects our land, protects our water, and protects our future.
Last two questions. Wisconsin's politically a purple state.
Yeah.
As governor, how would you build consensus across partisan and geographic divides while staying true to the democratic values and your campaign promises?
One of my favorite quotes is by Teddy Roosevelt. And he said, no one cares what you know until they know how much you care. And I think that one of the things that we have lost in politics is the ability to build relationships, build trust, build authentic relationships, not transactional relationships to get things done. And my time in the state legislature, as well as the county executive, I've always had to come to the table with Republicans. And I truly believe that, one, I'm willing to sit down and work with anybody who's willing to deliver on behalf of everybody that I represent. And I do believe that you don't have to give up your ethics, your morals, your values in order to negotiate to make sure that everybody in this state actually benefits from that piece of legislation.
Is compromise a bad word in politics?
I think it has become a bad word, but I do not believe it is a bad word. I think that we have not done enough to actually communicate to voters as far as what we are doing a lot of the times, in session, in committees. And so they are relying on a lot of rhetoric sometimes that some people put out there from those who are paying attention, who are, or want to create a little bit of a hesitancy with our voters. But I don't think that compromise is a bad thing. I think that at the end of the day, when we are compromising, it's about making sure that we are doing the right thing and not making political decisions, because so many people are hurting right now. So many people are desperate right now, and we need to make sure that we are providing the relief that they absolutely need.
I'm smiling. All decisions are political. Well, no, I mean, it is.
Well, when I say a political decision, like, are you making the decision based off of today and where we are, or are you basing the decision off of, well, are we going to be in power next year, right? And I think that, when
it's a consideration. I mean, you run to run again.
Well, you absolutely run to run again, but you're in office. You are in office, and you have a responsibility to those that represent you. And so my hope is that when you are making decisions, you're basing it off of those that represent you, not what is being pushed to you based off of politics.
So speaking of politics, my final question.
Okay.
The day after the primary. So regardless of the outcome, whether you win or lose, what should happen the day after the primary? And how would you work to unite Democrats like herding cats to support whoever the nominee is and ensure that the party's prepared to win in November?
Well, I know all about herding feral cats, right? I've been the chair of the Milwaukee delegation, chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, and shout out to everybody who I've worked with. I mean, it's not easy, finding consensus when you have a large body to work with.
And maybe that's not a word. I think it's so rare we have so-called consensus in politics, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
I mean, because people have their strongly held positions.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's why I think the word compromise is probably better.
Yeah, because finding the consensus, when you think about, 99 legislators, right? 33 senators, right? And it's just like trying to find a consensus is very difficult, even within your own party, right? Finding consensus can be difficult, but it's being able to communicate the ultimate goal. And if we all agree on the ultimate goal, whether people want to vote for something or not, that puts us in a much better position to deliver for our communities. And so, on August 12th, all of us in this race, right? We are running against one another, but we all have one ultimate goal, which is to make sure that we defeat the MAGA Republican in Tom Tiffany, so we don't have him occupying our governor's office. And so it doesn't matter who comes out of this Democratic Party, or where you sit, on the Democratic Party spectrum. We all need to come together. This is about delivering for families, delivering for our children, delivering for those that we represent who have been hurting for so long, especially our most vulnerable residents in the state of Wisconsin. And so, we all have to come together. And for me, I've always been a bridge builder. I've always wanted to bring more people to the table because it reminds me of that old African proverb. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, bring others along with you. And right now, when I think about the divide that we have seen in the past, 50 years between urban, rural and suburban communities, we may have come here on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. The things that we're facing here in large urban communities like the city of Milwaukee, they're facing in smaller communities like Viroqua, or in counties like Trempealeau County, or in Marinette, or in Superior. And so this is an opportunity for us to get a little comfortable being uncomfortable and understanding life outside of our geographical comfort zone, to build the relationships needed so we can pass policies that benefit everybody in this state.
How do you, because we're already getting definitions, I'd ask you that question, how you would label yourself.
Yeah.
People are already labeling people. I mean, the Democratic Socialist is pejorative, right?
Yeah.
How people, it used to be progressive and it used to be liberal. Within the Democratic Party, is there a way forward where we can be as inclusive, where the Democratic Party can be as inclusive in terms of all these different approaches? Because I think it's more about approach than it is what the ultimate goal is. Do you think that's possible?
Oh, I absolutely think it's possible. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter. We all want to make sure that when we all do better, we all do better. But it takes building those relationships, authentic relationships. And I think that we can't just keep showing up. Can't keep showing up just during campaign time, right? We have to organize even after the election. Once somebody is sworn in, how do we organize to make sure that we're passing good policy? How do we organize to make sure that people continuously stay civically engaged? How do we organize to make sure that we're not just winning state races, but we're winning congressional and United States Senate races, and eventually helping to shape, you know, who's going to be occupying the presidential, the White House moving forward? And so I absolutely believe that we can come to the table, but we have to be willing to set aside the differences and come down. And honestly, you know, this is something that we can learn from the Republican Party, because we've seen how they did that when it came down to Trump's election back in 2024. Do they all agree on everything? Absolutely not. But the ultimate goal is making sure that we can push an agenda that's going to benefit everybody. And that's why we need Democrats, not just in Wisconsin, but Democrats across this nation to really come together and focus on the agenda that we want to provide for all of our residents.
And just kind of a follow-up on that. And again, I'd asked that question about, you know, on August the 12th. What about the people who are diehard David Crowley supporters? Mm-hmm. And David Crowley may or may not prevail. I'm not jinxing.
For sure. I'm not gonna whoop.
Yeah, what does David Crowley do to make sure those folks don't sit it out?
Well, I'm not a guy who likes to sit on the sidelines. And so no matter who is coming out of this, you know, primary, I'm going to be out there making sure we're knocking on doors, making phone calls, and making the case, because this race is not about me. It's not about any of these candidates. It's about you, Keith. It's about the people who is in this building. It's about the people who are listening and who are not listening, about how they get access to the resources and the assistance that they need so they can not just survive, but thrive. And so, you know, it's going to take all of us coming to the table. And that's why me being an organizer, at the end of the day, you know, I want to make sure that we're utilizing my organizing skill set to push good policies.
County Executive David Crowley, candidate for governor. You always ask this. I should ask this question in the beginning. Why should people vote for David Crowley? After hearing all of that, right? If they haven't figured it out after hearing all of that.
Well, I hope they did after all of that. But, you know, I'm trying to lower costs for families. I am looking to invest in not just in early childhood education, but education as a whole, to make sure that families can thrive. I want to make sure that, you know, we're not just saving more money in folks' pocket, but we're putting more money in people's pockets across this state. And so, you know, at the end of the day, this is about how we invest in public education. It's about how do we increase the minimum wage. It's about how do we, you know, repeal Act 10 and right to work for less, so people can collectively bargain for their wages, for safe working conditions, and for their benefits. This is about making sure that our children have an opportunity to afford to go to college, and when they graduate college, there's a home for them to move back to when they want to come back to the community that they grew up in. And so this is an opportunity to really focus on the vision and the mission that we want to have as a state, because even though we may live in different counties, different cities, different towns and villages, we are still one Wisconsin.
County Executive David Crowley, Democratic candidate for governor of the great state of Wisconsin. Man, I appreciate you and your folks getting back and making this happen.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. You're listening to Community Voice. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Host Keith Parris.
All right, welcome back as we wait for our next guest. Man, I was all prepared to come in to do a program yesterday, and man, we when I came on, it was all silent. I'm going like, oh man, we paid the bill, right? Yeah. And then when I talked to Jermaine, and he explained to me that they'd lost power. My sister and him had also lost power, and we were just saying the crazy piece was they didn't lose power because of the storm. They lost power because of a faulty piece of equipment.
Really?
And yeah, that's
80,000.
about 18,000.
No, it was
80,000
80,000.
No, 80,000 was the storm and everything, but this was like early in the morning. It was like us, right? From that, and then you get the storm, which was a totally different piece. Yeah. So, man, dude, let me recap, because Monday's usually my weekend recap. I was telling Rhonda, So what a great year for me for music. I got a chance to hear Lettucey, and I got a chance to hear Kelly Price. Man.
Dude, Kelly ripped stage.
Man.
Hey, Keith, did you notice every song that she sung, the whole crowd?
That was the whole. I didn't realize how, people got fans.
Yeah.
Man, but they rushed came up. She didn't have to do the tracks.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you this. When she did As We Lay, it sounded like a bunch of women singing from experience. Because they was in that thing feeling it.
Yeah.
I ain't calling no names. But somebody said, I heard As We Lay.
Oh boy.
And I was sitting up there, man, and all Sunday morning, all that was going through my mind as I'm getting ready for church. As we lay.
We didn't think about
tomorrow. They did the background vocals. It was, so, and you know what? And first of all, her voice.
Amazing.
Her voice. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people, man, they kind of, the voice ain't, man, her voice was, and I think the crowd helped her. So I don't know if she got the same reaction when she went to other cities, but because I always hear this thing about Milwaukee crowds. Let me say this about Milwaukee crowds. Sometimes there's a reason why they ain't getting up.
Yeah.
Because you didn't show up.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. For somebody to come who hasn't had a hit in years,
right,
and sing her old records and people know the lyrics all the way through, and the crowd pretty much sung the show. So it was crazy.
I got to tell this story. So, I'm going to use my little VIP status whenever I can. I'm just that kind of dude, right? So when Rideout got this, said, Rideout, I ain't blank. Right? Oh, what happened, man? So I got my WNOV polo on, pull up into the parking. They turning people around. I get to the thing, WNOV, dude get on the walkie-talkie, WNOV coming through, WNOV coming through, talking to the sister, right?
Yeah.
So you get up to that next gate, she opened it up. Hey, WNOV. She said, you know this dude in back of you? I said, I ain't never seen this. Wait a minute. I turned around, it was Chris Levy.
I bet Chris was like, oh, this
Chris was I was like, look, I ain't trying to get nobody, because, people try to get in on your smoke, right? I was just like, I turned around, and I guess what she know, because he had on his WNOV, right? And she said, you know this dude behind me? I didn't even look in the rear view. No, let me get up in here. Every man for himself. It was Chris Levy, because that's the kind of dude I am. And so now we over in our little section. We're on the south side. Normally we're on the north side, but we're on the south side this time. Get in. We got our little VIP thing, and let me thank Debo and Sharon. A nice little hospitality thing going on over there.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we got to Kelly Price's third song, there's so many people that pushed up into the VIP.
Yeah, didn't they?
Yeah, man, they done pushed up in there. And then, okay, and this is the thing I love. This is why, man, Jermaine Rideout is one of my favorite people. Jermaine come all in like, hey, what's up?
Well, they actually escorted me up there.
I know they did.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. Okay.
So Jermaine come in, and and he talking, he got, he doing this, he doing that, hating on the dude, hating on the music.
Nuts.
He hating on the musician. Don't do that. Anyway, it sounded very good from where we were. Yeah. So let me. So he doing that. He just taking it all in. Just hate. Man, Kelly Price get up there. Him and Sharon pop up on the stage so quick. I'm going. He done went from a hater to a fan.
Look, I couldn't take it. But when she started singing, it was almost like church. Sorry, woman. I ran to the stage like, you better sing.
Balls up on the stage. You better say.
You better sing.
What you say did? What does the stage do?
Clark, listen. Hey, Clark, I ain't even lying. I saw the keyboard up there. I saw a dude sitting there, man. I want to move him out the way. Hey, man, let me play for
You
you.
didn't have to do anything.
Hey, yeah, man, let me play for
No,
you.
he didn't have to do.
He
He didn't have to do nothing because you couldn't even hear the tracks anymore.
I know.
Because the folks was out there and oh man, as we lay, Lord,
and she sound just like the record.
Yeah.
So that's what got me.
That's what I'm saying. Her voice was
like the
incredible, man.
You know what? Her and R. Kelly, they sound just like they record.
R. Kelly's
just like they record.
You ain't heard R. Kelly since he been locked up. He ain't sounded the same.
Actually,
when he performed,
did he?
Yep.
How you do it from prison?
From jail over the phone.
You know we creator, Keith. You know we creator.
You can actually YouTube it, man. Though he did Chris Brown remix. And he killed it. Yeah, he did it over the phone. And they, did a mix on it and put it out.
Man, so and again, just to it was so many people out there. I mean, it was
about 3 to 4.
Now, I ain't even gonna lie. When I pulled up and started walking in, the security guard was like, they go right out, y'all take them to the front. So they walking, taking me up there, and I'm looking around, and people like, bro, where you going? Can we go with you? I'm like, I'm trying to ignore him.
You come right out.
I'm trying to ignore him. Like,
make a lane. Here come right out.
Make room for
make
me,
room.
Bro.
Here he come. So great show. Let me shout out the people. And I know I've heard like last weekend was great. I heard this weekend was great. This past weekend. So let me shout out DJ Clark Kent.
Thank you.
Oh, he get hand claps.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry,
you get half and half.
No, so it turned out to be, man, just a great show. And look, man, I'm like right out. I'm a hater.
Man.
And when you come in, because I'm gonna tell you, man, I went to see some folks and I was going, and this was free, and I was complaining. But the fact, I think people got a great show. Man, it was so shout out that every now and then, man, you can hit, because who's this dude last year for I ain't gonna call out his name. Anyway, just to be able to do it, and you could see from her, she was really feeding off the crowd.
Yeah.
So, and then people were now she didn't have to go in and explain as we lay. People pretty much could.
Oh, they
we figured that out.
Oh, it was a bunch of scoring.
Oh man, those paid records.
Oh man. You heard it in the people's voice.
Now, don't add that, because you do a whole paid repertoire. So,
hey, Keith, speaking of records,
this Negro had you, boy. You just
Keith, I understand what you're talking about, right? So he let me listen to the demo yesterday. I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I'm grooving. I said, man, who's that singing? That's me. I got out the car, slammed the door, walked away. I said, now I understand what Keith talking about.
I said, hey, man, I just don't say too much, bro.
I slammed the door like,
man, him and Kelly could have got up there, man. And they boy, that was, ooh. But yeah, man, right out had you in tears.
Man, I appreciate it.
And then wait a minute. Then he got the closing. A change gonna come.
Yes,
now we went from broken hearted to the revolution.
And so whether it's in surrender or Black Power, either way they up. Either way.
Man, let me tell you something. Yesterday, Sunday, Russell came up. He performed with R&B Live. And that's my first time ever seeing R&B Live perform.
Russell
Smith.
From True Love?
Oh, he a monster.
Okay.
Man.
No, I know he a monster.
Man,
but this is the crazy thing about this, Clark. I had my show about 2-3 years ago, and nobody knew anything about Russell. So I had him on my show, Tribute to Soul Music, Gospel, and R&B. And when this cat came on stage, it's the honest to God truth. When he came on stage, people ran to the stage, right? And it turned into a whole offering. Like he was singing raise an offering at a soul concert. It was the craziest, and I got video of it. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. But just the energy that was in that building when he was on stage was amazing. So then after that, everybody was like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And they started reaching at him, and he just been ripping the stage ever since.
You know, I'm a believer in celebration. I am, and I know some of you deep church folks, but I don't care. The celebration's the celebration. You know, the jam is the jam, right? The worship is the worship. And when we get, man, where people get like on one accord, and now you got that whole movement, celebration is part of our African culture.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, and regardless, and people, man, whether it's the blues, whether it's gospel, whether it's funk, because I'm going to tell you, if you ever seen George Clinton live, you going to church.
You going to church, man.
Going to church, man. And can we use these words in church? Blank, blank, blank. Get off your blank and jam.
But you can use the music, though. You can be in your head like, Jesus, get up. Jesus.
No, when Tremaine Hawkins did Fall Down.
Fall Down, yeah. Now,
That's one of the
again,
great skating songs. Oh, man, people out there skating.
But you know, it was that time that music was in. It was in that disco realm. It was in that time when she put that record out, people thought she was going to hell. Like the church deemed her to hell. Like, oh, that's the blues. That sounds like the blues. That don't sound godly. And I asked the question because
she get royalty checks.
Well, I mean, but not only that, but people say that about the music that I produce. And I asked them, I said, well, what's godly music? Well, strings and organ. No, that's not godly. That's your perception on what godly music is.
Let me tell y'all. Russell was singing the song called Love Me For Real, and people didn't know he took him to church. As he was singing the song, took him to church, but he kept the song R&B.
All right. Hey, man.
Well,
that's the gift. Because he's black.
You're
listening to Community.
Hold on.
Yeah. So which mic you on, G?
I can get right here.
All right.
So y'all know we had what should have been labeled a disaster around here yesterday.
Yeah,
Power was out, flooded up to the steps again. So with that being said, Pitt's Funeral Home power was out as well. And so we were trying to, do my uncle's homegoing.
That was yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay.
So ain't no power, it's flooding everywhere, it's raining, storming. So Russell walks up because I had asked him to sing a song for me. So he walks up and he said, ain't no power, man. I said, man, you got power at your church? He said, yeah, I got power at my church. So thankful to him, Pitt's Mortuary, for actually allowing us to move the service over there. He didn't have to do that. So I certainly want to just take my hat off to him. What a wonderful, wonderful friend he proved himself to be. Of course, we gave him a love offering, but the fact that he was there and was able to do that for us, so I just wanted to thank him. And no fault to Pitt's Funeral Home because we all were without power.
When I pulled up and I saw their marquee not working, I knew, man, it was.
Yeah.
See, man, I told Clark, man, just put him on a raft in some water. Roll him on down the hill. Roll him on down the hill. Call it one.
Oh, you said that about my uncle?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay. Make sure the mic is off.
I know. Ain't nothing sacred here, man. You know that. Everything is fair game here.
Oh, I know.
Your life tragedy, we don't care.
I know.
Everything is
that's about as bad as that. Y'all saw that glass Chris Levy's sister-in-law bought him, that cup? It looked like an urn. He was proud of that cup. He ain't brought it back here no more, man. We lit him up. He ain't brought it out no more.
I'm telling you, as DJ, he caught it Friday. No, you know what?
Ain't nobody saying
wow.
Nobody.
When they talk about my back, I'm going like, man, I need a back and knock him.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, that was I told him Jermaine didn't do it, but I asked him to find that song. Push it, pull it. When he was walking, he looked like he was pushing and pulling.
Oh man. You listening to Community Voice. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
And turn progressive ideas into law. At the end of the day, politics is about power so you can change people's lives for the better. And that's why I'm running for governor. I currently serve in the state Senate. where I've been able to help expand access to healthcare, particularly in underserved communities like urban Milwaukee, like rural Wisconsin. I previously served 2 terms in the state assembly, where I was there to fight against Scott Walker and Tom Tiffany as they attacked public education and local governments. I'm an attorney by training, so I will 100% be holding the Trump regime accountable for their violations of our laws and the way they're undermining our rights. And I'm also a small business owner for 13 years. And I've spent 4 years as executive director of a reproductive healthcare organization. So really been involved in making change for 25 years on healthcare, public education, public safety, and all the issues that I think are important to people around the state.
You know, they're part of opposition is trying to define your opponent. So how would you describe your place within the Democratic Party? Would you describe yourself as a progressive, liberal, moderate, or something else? And how does your governing philosophy shape the policies you would pursue as governor?
I am socially progressive and fiscally responsible. I am a proud Democrat. I spent my early years in rural Taylor County in northern Wisconsin. And then my family later moved to Madison in Dane County, where I now represent. I firmly believe that every single Wisconsinite, no matter who you are or where you're from, you deserve the freedom to thrive. And that means raising wages. That means lowering costs on the big ticket items like housing and healthcare, childcare. And we have to have great public schools everywhere. Too often, I think Republicans have deprived our communities of the resources that they need so that opportunity is unequal in the state. It depends on what you look like. It depends on how much money your parents have, and that's wrong. I'm someone that absolutely believes the most important thing above and beyond ideology is what you can actually deliver for people. And so, although I'm very proud of my progressive values as a Democrat, I believe healthcare should be a right and available to everyone. I believe deeply in public education. I want early childhood investment and criminal justice reform. But at the end of the day, I've been able to get things done even when Republicans are in control because I am willing to work with people who think differently from me. And I think we deserve that in a governor. In fact, it should be a prerequisite for the job.
What's your vision for Wisconsin over the next 4 years if you're elected governor? And what would you want the people in Wisconsin to say in terms of change? Has it changed for the better or has it changed for the better because of your leadership?
I want Wisconsin to be the best place for public education in the nation. I want every single kid to be able to have the best childhood that they can and the best education that they can. I want more money in people's pockets. I want to raise wages by restoring collective bargaining rights and bringing that minimum wage up. And I'm the lead author of bills to do that. And I want to lower costs and open up the state's healthcare plan to let anybody buy in.
That's a great segue because I wanted to ask you about public education and funding public education. How important is adequate funding for public education where we assure the highest quality of education for all kids in the state of Wisconsin? And then you're in the legislature. Talk a little bit about the 400-year tax.
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying, Keith, I'm a mom and stepmom of 5, and I'm a proud public school graduate myself. It is obvious to me that at 47 years old, what my sisters and I got growing up in this state is different from what my kids are getting today. And that has everything to do with the way Republicans have taken money out of the public school system over decades. It is not okay with me. And I am not under any illusion that money is the only thing that our kids need and that our schools need to thrive. But you can't have high quality public schools without money. And it starts with the teachers at the head of the classroom, because we know that's the single most important factor in kids' success and their ability to learn is attracting and retaining great high quality teachers. We have a huge retention crisis, and it goes right back to teachers can't afford to pay their bills. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to pay off their student loans or even have kids themselves. And that goes right back to Act 10. It was Scott Walker and Tom Tiffany attacking public education, defunding public schools. And so I believe we should restore those pre-Walker tax rates on millionaires and billionaires, pour that money into public schools, and at the same time, improve quality and retention of our teachers by restoring collective bargaining rights.
What are, if you can identify, and I'm sure there's many, if you could, what are the three most pressing issues right now facing the state of Wisconsin?
Affordability, for sure, which is a function both of the fact that people are not earning the wages that they should be, right? Wages are being suppressed. It's also a function of the high cost of things, especially the big ticket items like housing and utilities and childcare. And I've got detailed plans for how we can address all of those. Number two, I would say, is public education, because it is so central to our economic success and to whether or not young people feel like they can build a life here and have families here. And number three, the threat to our democracy of this authoritarian regime in Washington. We need a governor who is fearless and not afraid to stand up to the bullies and billionaires that are trying to undermine our rights and our freedoms, hurt us in our pocketbooks as they line their own. And I've spent my career basically doing that. I called out Elon Musk 2 years ago, and I said, he's breaking the law trying to buy an election here. And now 2 years later, sure enough, the Elections Commission said, yep, we think he broke the law. We should prosecute him. I was the one who 20 years ago said, if Roe v. Wade is ever overturned, abortion could once again be a crime in Wisconsin. Sure enough, Trump did that. He attacked the freedom of women to make our own healthcare choices. And we saw abortion unavailable in Wisconsin for a period because of that law. And so I've never backed down when it comes to defending our rights and freedoms.
We talked a little bit with County Executive Crowley, and he brought it up. So I'd like to, you talk about public education, but we also know that the money that finances voucher schools and charter schools also is public money. What's your position on that?
I believe that public dollars belong in public schools, and I would like to bring the voucher scheme to a responsible end over time. I think that Milwaukee and Racine should be handled differently from the rest of the state. And my plan would not displace any child who is currently in Milwaukee or Racine from their education. They will be allowed to complete their education through graduating high school, as will any siblings that they have. However, it's also not okay to take public money and then discriminate. You shouldn't be able to fire a staffer because they're the wrong religion or because they're gay. You shouldn't be able to say, we don't want to educate this kid because she's got a disability. That is absolutely wrong.
Now, can they do that if they're taking public money?
They can today, but they shouldn't be able to.
Really?
Is my point. Yeah. I think, public dollars should come with responsibility. And what we've had is a situation where the public schools are playing by one set of rules, where they have to have licensed teachers, no corporal punishment. Kids have to take the forward exam. Their books are open and transparent. They're subject to open records laws. And then you've got private voucher schools that are not following any of those regulations. And so we don't really know where the tax dollars are going.
So I remember back in the day, the whole situation with Bob Jones University. And Bob Jones University lost federal funding because of their discriminatory practices there. That doesn't apply on the state level, where if you're taking state dollars, you're not subject then to the laws around employment. I understand with churches, because churches have their own.
Right.
I didn't realize that with some of these private schools, if they're receiving state money.
That's exactly what is happening around the state, is that religious institutions are running these schools and they're accepting public money under the guise of the voucher program, but they are still operating in ways that are discriminatory. And listen, every single kid, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you're from, how you're coming into the classroom, you deserve a great public education. And it is not okay, in my view, as a parent, that some kids are not getting that and they're being turned away from any school that's taking public money. I just don't think we can accept that in a democracy.
Can we talk a little bit about technology, AI, and economic development? Artificial intelligence and data centers are creating new economic opportunities, but they're also raising concerns and questions about energy use, jobs, privacy, and community impact. What's your vision for Wisconsin's role in this emerging economy, and how would your administration balance innovation with accountability?
I mentioned I was a small business owner, and my business uses technology to make it easier and more affordable for people to buy and sell homes. So I am by no means a Luddite, but I also know that there are incredible risks that are economic, social, political, and public safety risks with basically turning over too much power to big tech companies. AI is being used to deny prior authorization for healthcare. AI is being used to illegally price fix and raise rent on people. It's being used to offer discriminatory pricing at the grocery store. So you might see a $4 for a box of Cheerios, and I might see $2 or $6 based on our credit histories. That is wrong. And no legislator in the state, Keith, has authored more bills to regulate big tech and to protect us from those kinds of harms than I have. So I'm very much a believer that there's incredible possibility with technology. My dad was lucky enough to get a lung transplant earlier this year, and AI was incredibly helpful to us as his family and caregivers in understanding how to help support him through this and what the risks are and how to manage that. And I think there's possibilities for AI to deliver better public services to people at lower cost and help our public employees do their jobs more effectively in serving the public. But at the same time, we can't have things like weaponized autonomous drones. We cannot allow bots to be raising the prices on everything from groceries to concert tickets. We cannot let predatory social media companies continue doing essentially a big social experiment on our kids at the expense of their mental health and their well-being. And that's why I have been very aggressive in regulating big tech.
The 800-pound gorilla in the room is data centers.
Yep.
No one wants them in their communities.
Mm-hmm.
How do you allay the concerns that people have about data centers? You're talking about the benefit of AI and data and how dependent we are
Mm-hmm.
on this data, right? How do you allay their concerns around, I don't want that data center because of energy use
Mm-hmm.
or other things in my community?
Well, I don't think it's my job to allay people's concerns about data centers. I think it's my job to make sure that communities are the ones who are deciding their own futures. And I believe we need, at a minimum, very strong state regulations to protect our workers, our environment, especially our water, to protect all of us in our pocketbooks as ratepayers, who need utilities, and to protect local control and transparency, because what's happening right now is not okay. You've got these big, powerful, wealthy companies just coming in, steamrolling communities, and people don't even find out about it until after the deal's already done. I think that's unacceptable, right? That's not consistent with local control. And so my plan would basically be to help local communities be in the driver's seat. We're going to have a state team of expert negotiators that if a local community decides, hey, we want to have a conversation with Meta or Google about a data center, don't make that retired town board chair go up against a team of lawyers from Facebook that do this all day. Give them a team of expert negotiators. Make sure that there's strong state standards so that they don't have to worry about the quality of the water or whether the workers are going to be well paid or whether there's going to be an NDA. That stuff is going to be demanded up front. I also want to make sure that we're not subsidizing data centers. Right now, the bill that Republicans passed is going to cost Wisconsinites about $2 billion. That's money out of our pockets going right into the pockets of these big tech oligarchs. That's totally backwards. They should be paying us. And so my plan calls for us to get hundreds of millions of dollars from every data center development that we will use then to finance our own public clean energy infrastructure bank so that we can get solar panels and geothermals on, North Division High School, right? And make sure that we're getting cleaner air, lower energy costs, and getting to address climate change by energy efficiency and more clean and renewable energy.
Wisconsin has been politically described as a purple state.
Yeah, I've noticed.
As governor, how would you build consensus? But can I substitute this word? How can you work towards compromise across partisan and geographic divides while staying true to your democratic values and your campaign promises?
Keith, this is the work that I have been engaged in for 25 years. And part of that, of course, I've been in the Senate and the Assembly as a legislative leader. But other parts of it, I've just been a citizen, an activist, or a nonprofit leader, or just an attorney. I pride myself on really working hard to listen to and hear from and seek out people who have different ideas than me. I like to go on right-wing radio. And I want them to ask me tough questions, because I find that oftentimes if you can make a connection with someone, you can find something to work together on. And so even though I'm a proud Democrat, I'm proud of the progressive values that I have around civil liberties and civil rights. But I've also been very proud to have worked across the aisle and been able to pass bills again and again and again in pretty tough Republican-dominated situations as a Democrat. And there's no other candidate running for governor. None of my friends in this race have a track record like that, where they can say, hey, we've passed bills for over 20 years in these really challenging, divided times.
Is compromise a bad word in politics?
It shouldn't be, because that's, the alternative is you have dictators. And I sure don't want that. That hasn't working out so hot for us right now, I'd say. No kings, no queens.
My final question. The day after the primary.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of the outcome of August 12th, what should happen the day after the primary?
Mm-hmm.
How would you work to unite Democrats, support the nominee, whoever, whether it's you or someone else, and ensure that the party's prepared to win in November?
The most important thing for all of us to do is to unite behind our nominee so that we can beat Tom Tiffany, because Wisconsin cannot afford to have Donald Trump's rubber stamp as our governor. We just cannot afford it. The thing that really worries me is that we've got Republicans trying hard to choose their own nominee that they want to run against. They are backing Hong in the Democratic primary and trying to gin up Democratic voters to vote for her, because they think, and they may well be wrong, I hope they are, but they think that she's going to be the easiest one for Tiffany to beat. And not a lot of people know this, Keith, but Republican billionaires, 2 billionaires, put $16 million into the Senate and Assembly Republican committees, because they apparently see a path where if they get the nominee that they want to run against, that they could win a Republican trifecta in Wisconsin. We have worked too hard for too long to claw our way back from 2010 and that terrible Walker years to throw it away now. And that means every single one of us has to work together to make sure that we can elect Democrats in the legislature and that we have a Democratic governor come January, so that we can actually deliver for people. At the end of the day, I want to be governor, not because I want to drive around in a black SUV and cut ribbons. I want to use power to make people's lives better, to put more money in people's pockets, to lower the cost, make universal early childhood available, great public schools, and to protect us during this really scary moment for our democracy.
You said it without saying it, so I'm gonna, only because you brought it up. Politics is perception. What people see really is. I want to see something in that candidate that's me, right?
Yeah.
Just by nature of what's happened here, we have 2 women.
Mm-hmm.
We have 1 woman of color.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 black males.
Mm-hmm.
That can factor into people's choices. Are you concerned about that? Like the difficulty that women face, regardless of ethnicity. Should that be a concern in a purple state like Wisconsin?
I think we are lucky to have a diverse slate of candidates. I mean, the most diverse in the history of our state. I think that's wonderful. I will say I do get the question, can a woman win in Wisconsin? And I just got to turn around and point to my girl, Tammy Baldwin. She is the most popular elected official in the state of either party. And she and I...
Did she won the year, even when Trump won, she won.
She sure did. Yeah. She sure did. And, she and I have a lot in common. We are both, Dane County liberals. We're both lawyers. We're both experienced legislators, and she is incredibly popular in this state. 6 of our 7 Supreme Court justices are women. And I also really think it's important to push back whenever people say, well, a black candidate can't win in Wisconsin. That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. Just because not every black candidate or not every woman has won every single election does not mean that those candidates cannot win. This state voted twice for Barack Obama, right? And my hope
would vote a 3rd time.
Yeah, let's do it again. I mean, let's get that. Any Obama, let's, Malia, whoever wants to come, let's get him. Let's get all the
Oh,
Obamas.
you just need the name, right?
Yeah.
No, I say that because, again, we can. That's what the question I was asking.
It's a
about,
fair question,
about
right? We should
labeling.
talk about it. Let's get it out there.
Yeah, talk about labeling.
Mhm.
So when you hear the concern where we use this term electability, now being somewhat of a wordsmith, I understand what obviously electability is. I'm running to get elected,
Right.
but that's not what it's saying.
Right.
And so when that's used,
Mhm.
that becomes concerning because now it is a dog whistle.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's important to be pushing back on that. Should voters think about electability? Absolutely. But what does electability mean? It means somebody who voters feel like, oh, that person's going to fight for me, or I trust that person. That person's going to go toe to toe with Donald Trump. That person's not going to roll over when ICE comes into our state, or that person can take down Tom Tiffany on a debate stage, or that person shares my values. That's what electability should mean. We should be talking about who's got the experience, who's got the knowledge, who's got the track record. And, fortunately, in a democracy, in the free country that we all deserve, we each get to make that decision for ourselves.
Should have asked this question at the beginning. I said the same thing to County Executive Crowley. So I ask it at the end. Why should the Wisconsin voters vote for Kelda Roys? Kelda, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Voters should vote for me because I have been working to build power and make your lives better for my whole career. I have the most experience getting things done in state government. I have strong progressive values combined with a track record of bipartisanship and independent thinking, being willing to stand up to members of my own party even when they were wrong, that contrasts sharply with Tom Tiffany. I am the candidate that is best able to unite Democrats in what is kind of a divisive moment for our party, if I could say that, to beat Tom Tiffany, deliver a Democratic legislature, and most importantly, actually get the progressive Wisconsin that all of us deserve.
State Senator Kelda Roys. She is a candidate for governor and on the Democratic side in terms of the primary. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I say one quick thing?
Mm-hmm.
I am really honored to have the backing of WEAC, the state's teachers union, in this race. I also have the most endorsements overall. And even though I am running against 3 good Milwaukee County candidates, I have more endorsements in Milwaukee County than any other candidate in the race. So I'm going to just ask for your voters to check me out, check out my website, consider it, and I hope I can earn your vote August 11th.
And good luck tonight.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And you and David coming in, I know this should have been debate prep time, and that you took the time. So I appreciate you. Thank your campaign for reaching out immediately.
My pleasure.
To make you available. Appreciate that. Again, State Senator Kelda Roys. She is a candidate for governor on the Democratic side. That primary is August 11th. You're listening to Community Voice. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Oh man, did you hear that little stank on that?
Boy, hey,
They
man,
got
for you
cut
to
it
throw
out
your
too
face
early.
up like
Well, but someone had said because what was it last week? They love being able on terrestrial to hear. They get a chance to hear Valdez in the country.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if we really like today, we need to start as quickly as we can, and so then people didn't get it. But man, I never heard that little stank. That
Hey,
little,
Doc,
little bass line.
Hey, man, make you. Woo.
Yesterday, speaking of baseline, yesterday was Verdine White's 75th birthday. So shout out to Verdine White.
So is he still on the road? Or
Yeah,
did he
he's back
kinda-
now. He's
Okay,
back. He's
okay.
back.
No, he was off
But man, you could look at him, man, and his knees really got knocked.
Yeah.
And
Kenny Smith.
and I know he had some kind of surgery last summer. Because they did that September 21st of September thing, which was a great show. They had all these folks in, and they have another dude who plays bass. I think he only played on like 3 songs, and the other dude pretty much carried the bass. Let me see. Let me go into the chat here. Let's see. Keith, you are a good interviewer. Oh, thank you, George. what she's saying in D.C. said have been saying for years now. I pray we don't have another 2024. Trump said yesterday, we is better. He is better for us than our parents.
Something is wrong with what?
Something very wrong.
What's wrong with this dude?
Very wrong. Yes, WAP 92, Mandela Barnes is scheduled to be here with us tomorrow morning at 9:00. So again, he'll be here tomorrow morning. The campaign reached out. I did reach out to, like I said, all five. I've heard from one. I think they're still, because the primary is next week. So I'm still hoping that the other two candidates will also come on. And let me say what precipitated this. Someone had called me about something, and I'm going, it's better to have that conversation with the actual candidates, because their tight time frame. They were, it was blocked about 25 to 30 minutes. If they would have agreed to stay, I would have then opened the phone lines. But again, people go in the chat. Let's see. He came on Keith's show when he ran for senator. He did. It was a little controversy there, but Mandela is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Again, Channel 12 tonight at 7:00 is doing their gubernatorial forum. All five of the remaining Democratic candidates are there, so people get a chance to see them go at each other. And I was purposeful in not raising some of the outside noise that you hear. I just really wanted them to talk about policy and philosophy, all the other stuff that people do to attack you. I don't know if that's the space, for this. And let me say this about the Democratic Party. What a great opportunity. What a great opportunity. Chances are they're going to retake the House. Senate now is becoming problematic because of the situation with Plattner up in Maine. And now that they had to I think Jackson will be the nominee there. Susan Collins was considered the most vulnerable Republican running for re-election. But with all the discord and then the issues they're having at the Democratic National Committee in terms of financing and the person, I guess she should have elected Ben Winkler. How about that? So it's going to be interesting. I was talking to County Executive Crowley off air, and I asked that question about what happens on August the 12th. And I'm going to tell you, man, sometimes it's like herding cats. Okay. So you hope that they being the current five people who are running, will not do a lot of damage to each other. I know you're in it to win it, but for some people, the most important thing is beating Tom Tiffany, and then I think we need to be mindful of this. And I asked this question: you might vote for somebody in the primary, and your candidate might not win. The question is, what will people do if their candidate doesn't win? In my mind, the worst thing you can do is sit it out because your guy or gal didn't win. And again, these folks there is not any daylight between the issues, their philosophy, even their governance, or their approach to governance. So I think Kelda, I think she described it. It's not like, these are poo butts. I think all five of these candidates are highly qualified to lead the state of Wisconsin. So that's the issue that Dems will have in terms of how you come together after a crazy primary. You've never seen a person get out the race and then asked to get back in the race. That's something I've never experienced in my lifetime. So, yeah, I guess, man. They said the greatest book is yet to be written. So I'm with that. Again, because we weren't here for circumstances beyond our control yesterday, and I don't know, I think it hit when we were leaving the air Friday that LeBron James has signed with the Philadelphia 76ers. I talked to Frankie, and Frankie is a big Sixer fan, so he was laying it out. I said, yeah, man, y'all got a stellar starting five. Who's on that bench?
Nobody.
Okay.
And I was telling people that what people don't understand, the way the league is going is more of a young man's league now. So run and gun, a lot of transitional offense, and you got to look at some of these older players after a while. Now, I understand the first 2, 3, 4 times up down the court, but as the game go along, Father Time is undefeated. So he's going to start feeling.
And how many games they played?
Hey, man, Father Time is 82. They play 82 games, so I'm sure he's not going to play all 82.
I don't know if you see me getting ready to cut cross.
I see 109th Street.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to cut cross. So, just so I understand.
Hey, man, this different between me and
No. Just so I understand, and I flunked kindergarten. So just so I understand, are you telling me that it's such a young man's league that if you had a choice between LeBron James and AJ Green, who would you take right out?
I'm answering the phone right now.
Last time I checked, AJ Green is a relatively young man. It's a young man's league. Who would you take? Would you take LeBron James? And you know what? AJ Green's gonna get paid more money than LeBron James.
$20 million.
No, because LeBron has decided that with the veterans minimum, right?
Yeah,
right.
$8 million for 2 years.
Caller, welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
Not bad.
Good.
I'm looking at you on the TV and heard you were sick.
Boy, ain't that how rumors get started?
I'm looking at him on the TV.
Do he look sick to you?
Earlier, he did. He came in, I saw him standing up.
He needed some milk. That's all it was.
No, he didn't need milk. He needed to stop drinking milk. He looked almost 9 months PG. But regarding this morning in the interview with Roy, I see you had your questions scripted. I want to question always to all governor candidates and all politicians for the state. Why is Milwaukee paying $20 extra wheel tax and 9% sales tax and not getting back what we're supposed to get?
Okay, good question. Now the wheel tax is local. Wheel tax, because Milwaukee County also has a wheel tax.
Okay.
And I think Racine is talking about going to a wheel tax.
Really? Well, as long as we're the only ones doing it and they're talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, we got to figure out the potholes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Potholes are 30 years old. When they paved the streets, they did it pitifully, and then they didn't correct it. It's like the county supervisor said he was supposed to do. And y'all have a good one.
All right, you too. Well, man, I feel better than I think I actually look. But okay, man, I didn't realize that I was looking that bad.
Well, no, I mean, the first couple of times when he was lipping,
man, y'all saw me, man. You had to help me to the car, man.
Yeah, you can tell that it was bothering you. It was.
Yeah, it's called pain.
Yeah, irritating.
Pain, irritating.
Yeah.
It was painful,
So
man.
You know how like that, certain pain, it just irritates you. Like certain pain, you can deal with. Like okay, I can deal with it.
That's discomfort.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Because remember they used to say there's a difference between playing hurt and being injured.
Yeah.
Right. And I was injured.
Yeah.
I was injured. As a matter of fact, when I went to the orthopedic yesterday, he said, how'd the shot go? I said, man, 85% better.
Yeah.
He said, but that's surprising to me. And he said, okay, because sounds like he won't do surgery. So I'm doing all I can to avoid surgery. So a lot of it is the exercise. and building up your core. That's what the physical therapist. I was telling, I bumped into someone, and I was telling them how I've learned more about my body every time I go to physical therapy. You know, just how the brain controls a lot of this, and but yeah, man, y'all, there were some moments that man, I mean, it's a lot better, a whole lot better. I'm moving slowly because part of that is being able to learn how to walk normally again. I was a physical therapist on Friday, not Friday, last Tuesday. I said to her, I just want to get my Denzel Washington walk back. Now, I'm only going to give the race of these people because it was something that we kind of alluded to in our interviews, and certainly with Kelda. She said, no. She's a physical therapist. No, you want to walk like Obama. Oh. And she did the Obama walk. Oh, man, she had the Obama walk, man. And I said, okay. So, and then she said, which was very interesting, unsolicited, because, you know, like I said, I go out and I ain't political. Right. All right. So, when I mean I ain't political, but I ain't political in terms of I'm spouting what you know. So she said, and we miss him.
Yeah, because everybody feels.
And everybody in the room was like, yup.
Yeah. Oh, now y'all miss him.
No, I think that there were a lot of people who, there was a lot that went into Donald Trump getting in the second time. And you know, me and DJ were really going back and forth about this, because there are things that's outside of the control of any candidate. You try to control what you can control, but you know, no one accounted for 1 million white males who normally don't vote showing up to vote.
Well, yeah, they did, because it was all part of that 2025 plan.
It was Rogan, and it was what's my boy?
Charlie
Kirk.
Rogan and
Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And so that flew under the radar. People had no, and then in 2016, you had people who showed up, but then you had people who didn't show up.
Yeah.
That's the margin, you know.
See, but you know what tripped me out is, though, you got people like Joe Morgan. I mean, not Joe Morgan, I'm sorry. I forgot the guy last name. I see his face. Joe Rogan.
Rogan, right.
That, you know, he was campaigning for Trump. He was pushing a narrative, and then now all of a sudden he's now against Trump, saying how bad of a person Trump is, and this and this and that. Well, you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah, and I think also he's more important to Trump than Trump is to him. His listeners are going to listen to him,
of course,
before they listen to Trump.
Of course.
And so I think it was that. I think, you know, some things, thank God for people, I guess any little progress is better than no progress, where people began to look at things. I think it was the war. And man, when you just sit up and think about, I was watching, what's my guy, Brendan Fraser. He did Eisenhower. Man, this is a great movie. It talks about the 3 days leading up to D-Day and how it really came down to a meteorologist dude who do the weather.
Meteorologist?
No, that ain't it either.
No, that ain't it?
No.
God, dog it, I thought I was.
But when you sit up and think about how serious people are, and you know, Dan Cain and J.D. Vance have come out, because both Dan Cain, obviously he's the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and J.D. Vance served in the military. They kind of understand how the military works.
Right.
You know, Donald Trump went to military high school. That ain't the same. They ain't the same. And so when people kind of get out and he just figures like, man, I'll get out and my generals can go in. And then you have someone like Pete Hegseth, who is such a sycophant that's all is in. I just want to please him. Somebody has to tell the emperor, you're not wearing clothes.
Matter of fact, from, you know, I was just watching this this documentary, and they were saying how Trump was actually put in that school because he was bullying people, and his parent put him in that school
for discipline.
That's
why a lot of kids went to military school.
Wait. Say it again.
Yeah, Trump, you know, growing up, he was a bully. And his parents saw that in him and put him in military school for discipline for punishment.
That's what those schools. That's what those schools were designed for. Usually, rich kids whose family are looking to put it in to change behavior. But obviously, I don't know how much they talked about military strategy. But I know this. If you expend something and you don't replace it, at some point there's a deficit.
Yes, sir.
I'll say it again. If you expend and don't replace it, there's going to be a deficit. And you underestimated the Iranians. And the Iranians are making you look stupid on the world stage.
Yep, playing with them.
Right. He lost all negotiating positions of strength. All that is gone. Yeah. He's not in a position where he can do anything. And then because you hate Obama so much, you tear up his agreement, which went a long way. And now you back to square one, but you broke it and you don't know how to put it back together.
And the issue is now, and I guess that they're running low on weapons.
That's what I'm saying.
And he tried to blame, well, Biden gave all the weapons away and Obama did this, but when I came in, it's plenty weapons. Mm-hmm. Like, man, stop lying.
And here's the other piece. And again, I've been saying it. No one told you that they control the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's economy, all those things
goes through there.
Right. And now the Houthis are making sure the Saudis can't ship their oil. Oh, a lot going on.
Everybody.
Let me thank County Executive David Crowley. Let me thank State Senator Kelda Roys. Clark Kent, thank you, sir.
Who you with?
Hey, man, with you, bruh. Apostle?
Bishop, I'm so glad I didn't have to call.
Next time we go to a show, don't be blocking my view.
Hey, man.
You had.
I had to see, brother.
And then somebody said something. They looked at us like, "Ed, what you gonna do?" I guess I'll just have to sit here and deal with the audience. Hey, y'all, the good Lord will, the creek don't rise. Hope to talk to everybody tomorrow. And as always, go from this place in peace.